BIS Wired, or the Biodiversity Information Service Wildlife Recording Database, is the online site for recording your wildlife sightings in Powys and the Brecon Beacons National Park. This is the area that BIS covers. If your wildlife sighting was made in a different part of Wales, then you should make that on the relevant local environmental record centre's online recording site. For North Wales, that's Cofnod. For West Wales, it's WWBIC, and for South East Wales, it's SUBREC. Before you can start making your wildlife records on BIS Wired, you need to create an account. There's a link here under the login area. Once you have created your account, you'll receive an email to confirm that email address. Do check your spam and junk folders, because sometimes they do end up in there. And once you've confirmed your account, you can use your username and password to log in to BIS Wired. Just one thing of note, the username is used to log in rather than your email address. To make it easy, you can have your email address as the username, and then you'll be able to use your username, your email as the username to log in. Once you've logged in to BIS Wired using your username and password, you'll come through to the home screen, which has a list of recent records that different people have made in the BIS area. That's Powys and Brecon Beacons National Park, and a map to show where those records have been made. So this is the home screen. To make a record, you go to the record button and click. And the easiest way to make a single record is to enter a casual record. The website makes it easy to record your wildlife sightings, as it will make sure that the required information has been filled in the boxes. So you need to know the date of your wildlife sighting, what your recorder name is. You can write it normally, you don't have to write your surname first. What species you have seen. I'll just record the wren, one of the most common birds in Britain. And you'll notice that when you type the species you want to record, a drop-down list of possibilities from the species dictionary will appear. And as you keep writing, that will change. And eventually you'll see the one that you need, and it tells you which taxon group it is, and also gives the Latin name as well, the scientific name, as well as the common name. So when you see the one that you want, you must click on it to select it, rather than just writing it in the box. You can add further information if you like on how certain you are that is what it was that you saw, if it's male, female, how many you saw, and the life stage of it. If anyone's helped you identify the wildlife that you're recording, you can pop their name in there, and that will help us to verify your record, or will help the expert that might see your record be able to verify it, and that just gives your record extra value. So if someone has helped you identify it, be it on the Facebook group or someone in person, then pop their name in there. You can add a photo, which is a really useful way to get your record verified. There's two ways of doing that. You can use the add photo button and then select the relevant photo from your files on your computer, or if you open the place where your photo is, you can drag and drop that file into the box here. The other important bit of information that we definitely need is the location. That's usually as a grid reference. Here it's called a spatial reference. A grid reference is one of various spatial references. So if you know the area by grid reference, you can pop it in there. And you can also search for a place on the map. So for example, if I search Talgarth, the map will go to that place, and then you can zoom in and out, and pinpoint the location where your record was. There's various ways of seeing the record, including Google Hybrid, which is sort of like a satellite image. So for example, if I saw the wren on Church Street just here, I can click on that square. If I want to make it a little bit more general, I can zoom out, and the square that is clicked will be slightly wider area. And that will be represented in the grid reference. So this size of square, which is 100 by 100 meters, is a 6-figure grid reference. If I were to zoom in, I want to pinpoint that I'd seen it in this exact area here. That is a 10 by 10 meter square, and you can see the grid reference, spatial reference, has increased to an 8-figure grid reference. So that's the spatial reference, the grid reference. It's also good to actually give us a location name, and that just helps us when cross-referencing that grid reference with the place name, so we can be sure that that is the spot that you want to record your wren, in this case at. You can also add the habitat that you saw it in and write a comment. For example, was it taking food to a nest? That just gives us a little bit more information about the record, and in the case of birds, can be a sign that that wren is breeding. So we know that it's been breeding, which is useful information. With the exactness of the record, you can alter that if you think your record is sensitive, and you can do that by ticking this box here, and that will blur your record to a larger area depending on which you choose. One note of caution with that, we here at the Local Environmental Record Centre only see that blurred record level. So if you blur your record to 10 kilometres, then we will only get the, in this case, 2-figure grid reference for that record. So that might be good if you're recording a sensitive bird of prey, for example, and you don't want other people to know exactly where it is. But then it does reduce the quality of that record, because 10 kilometres by 10 kilometres is quite a big area, and it means that we can't pinpoint or have a better idea as to where you've seen that particular record. So I would suggest that if you are going to blur a record, do it to 1 kilometre or 2 kilometre, which does make that record blurred enough, not so that someone doesn't know exactly where it is, and it also gives a useful location for us to use as a record. Most records aren't sensitive, so most of the time you won't need to tick that box. And then once you've completed all the information, the 4 items that we do need, and it won't let you submit the record unless they are filled in, are the date, so when your wildlife record was seen, so that's the date that you saw the wren, your name, the species, so what you've seen, and also the location, which ideally will be 2 bits of information, a place name and a grid reference. So it's the who, what, where, and when, in any particular order. And all the rest of the information is extra, which you can fill in if you like. So once you've made your record and you're happy with it, you can go to the bottom and click submit. And then that will upload that record to the BIS database, and then we can add it to our big list of records. And the message up there says thank you for submitting your record. If you want to check that that record has gone off and reached us, you can use the Explore button. In the Explore button, you'll be able to explore all your records. So explore my records, and also explore all records. So that's all the records that have been made by the various recorders using BIS Wired. You'll notice that it says quick afterwards, and these two at the top load much quicker onto your computer, but they're just a little bit slower, ironically, to add a record that you just submitted using the record tab that we just looked at. So you might go to explore my records as soon as you've made a record, and you won't see it. It does take a few minutes, sometimes a little bit longer to get on there. However, the old system, the old way that we used to load my records and all records into BIS Wired is down at the bottom with the word full, and that is just about instant. So your record will show in there once you've made it straight away, but it is quite a bit slower to load all the data there. So you take your pick and see. So anyway, it's been a few minutes now since I made my Wren record. So let's go explore my records. And that's just a warning because I came from the record page and it thinks that there might be some data on there that I haven't submitted, but I know that I did submit my Wren record. And sure enough, here's a list of my records, and you can see that the Wren I saw in Talgarth today is listed. So that record has been submitted to us and is available for us to download onto our database. You can also see what everyone else has been recording. So explore all records, which is quite interesting. And you'll see that quite a few have a photo next to them. So it makes the record a little bit more interesting, and also enables an expert if there happens to be one. Not all species have an expert, taxon group have an expert that sees the records here, so not all of them will get verified, but if there is and there's a photo, it does help with that verification process. And you'll see some, I'm Ben by the way, some records that I made earlier with advice on what they were from a guy called Ian Andrews, who's in a Facebook group on Diptera, so the flies. So I posted these photos onto a Facebook Diptera group, and Ian Andrews gave me some ID suggestions, and I put those into Wired. So back to the recording your wildlife. The first record we made of the Wren was a casual record, so that's doing a record one by one. If you went to a site or in your back garden, for example, and wrote down a list of records, so maybe several birds and butterflies that you saw, you can enter those as a list of records. So record, enter a list of records. And that means that the where bit is repeated for the whole list that you put in here. So the first section is what did you see? So I saw it today. There's my recorder name. And if I want to record some other species that I've seen, say in my garden, put blackbird, again, choose the blackbird or whichever species from the drop-down list, and then that will add that. Add any other comments you want to. And then I also saw a robin. Again, make sure you choose the right one. It's not always the top one of the list. And there we go, robin the bird. So that's 2. So I could add more and more. Once they've all been added to the list, I go to the Where Was It tab. And again, I can click where it was. So Talgarth, enter a grid reference, a spatial reference. If you know the grid reference of the place where you are, you can enter it. Here's some that I did earlier. And again, if you're not quite sure, you can use the map function, Talgarth, and search to pinpoint where you saw those. So for example, churchyard. And again, it'll give you a grid reference, spatial reference there. fill in the habitat and any comments, and then you can submit your records. And both of those will be listed with that location. And again, you get the message, say thank you. And if you go explore my records the quick way, you can see that it's not that quick to load new records. So we've got the Wren, but the other two haven't been loaded yet. But if I went to here, they would be on there, but it's a lot slower to load, so I'm not going to do that. So that's how easy it is to make records. There's also a enter records at several places tab. And this is a little bit more complicated to use. So it might be that you've been to several places on one day, and it allows you to add those records in one box, but it's a little bit more tricky to use, and I don't use it very often, to be honest. And I would suggest that if you are making a list of records in various places, you do a separate list for each site. But have a look at that if you're interested in using it. The how do I section is really useful, as it's a kind of help section. Just to note that every time you leave the recording page, it will give you this warning that you do want to leave the page, just in case you have any information on there that you haven't submitted, the record that you haven't submitted. So the how do I help section has loads and loads of information on using BIS Wired, so do have a look at that if you get stuck. These tabs here are just because I have admin rights, so they won't appear on your screen, just to confirm that. And if you do want to log out, obviously the button is there on the right, you will see that, and my account is where you can change your password if you wanted to do that. In the Explore button, there's various other options. You can see all the photos of the wildlife records that you've submitted. You can see a list of the different places that you've recorded wildlife. And if any experts have got back to you, you can see those in my notifications. Some of you may have opted to receive those notifications by email, in which case they won't show here. But if, like me, you haven't or don't want them by email, they will show here. So if we click on those, we can see any comments that the experts, the verifiers that see your records, have made in the column here. At the moment, there aren't any, so I think they've probably all been deleted, because I know that some of the experts have looked at our records. And you can also see maps, and if you're competitive, there is a recorder league table for records made, and also records made using the Lurk Wales app. So have a look at those, and hope that explains a little bit about using BIS Wired to make wildlife records, and to look what other people have been recording in the Explore function as well. Any questions, queries, or if you get stuck, do check out the How Do I Help section, or email us at info@bis.org.uk. Thanks for watching.